Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Career Diaries by Elemed, the podcast dedicated to talking about exceptional careers in the medtech industry. Today, I'm super excited to have a female founder on the show, Michelle Lott from Lean RAQA. Michelle, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yep. So my business is Lean RAQA, and we primarily help startups and small to mid-sized companies get products from very early stage concept development all the way through the regulatory path to clearance and whatever their desired markets are, and then help them with their quality management system along the way.
Cool. And you're in the US. Whereabouts are you based?
I'm in Arizona, so right now we're going to be pushing about 110 degrees Fahrenheit this time of year.
Yeah, I'm sitting in London right now, and it's just absolutely incredibly hot. The problem that we have here is that we don't have air conditioning apparently. So but you're a global company, aren't you, Michelle? Because I've seen you everywhere in my LinkedIn feed. So
right.
So where do you operate? I mean, what major markets do you sit in?
Well, so I was very blessed before COVID hit in that my business was already virtual. I have been self-isolating for at least 6 or 7 years now because my clients are not only all over the United States, but they're all over the world.
Yeah.
And I speak internationally as well. And so I have a pretty wide-reaching presence, including subcontractors on a couple of different continents. So we can really support. We've got somebody in a time zone somewhere that can reasonably support you.
Wow, I mean, it's incredible, and it's one of the benefits of the globalization in the world, how it is today. I'd love to kind of really dig into your story and kind of like rewind and start from the beginning. So how did you kind of get into regulatory and quality in the first place?
Well, it's, I'm old enough to where it's something that you just kind of chose you and you just fell into it. Now it's a career you can get a degree in. And when I started it, that was, that wasn't, regulatory wasn't a thing, so to speak. If you want to go way back, my mom makes a joke that my favorite thing to do at 4 was to do paperwork. So she's like, I didn't know what you were doing. You'd sit in the corner, you'd do your paperwork, and then you would file your paperwork. Then you get your paperwork back out. She's like, I didn't ask questions because you were quiet. So personality wise, it seems like something that just I was called to do. But it was really, I have a background in forensic toxicology. I used to work at the Mississippi Crime Laboratory. I ended up needing to move to North Mississippi and was going to need to change careers. So one of the only employers in the town was Baxter Healthcare. And I had applied for a job in the chem lab. I was just going to go back to my laboratory roots because I had done a stint. We had a family business, Oriental rug business that I had managed for some time after I was a toxicologist. So I was like, I'll just go back to the chem lab. Well, I didn't get the job at the chem lab, and I was really surprised because I knew I was the only candidate that had ever actually worked in a lab. But they called me a few months later and they said, well, we have this internal auditor role open, and you had such a great personality because you had worked in this kind of retail public space, but you still had that technical know-how that we needed to be a good auditor. So they left a pile of regulations on my desk because that plant made medical devices, pharmaceuticals, combination products, and ran 3 types of sterilization. And they said, here's a stack of regulations you need to know. Your first audit's in a month. Know them, love them, have fun. So it was like really drinking out of the fire hose, and that was how I got started in medical devices, and it was all uphill from there, I guess. It wasn't all downhill, that's for sure.
So it's really sink or swim from the beginning.
Yeah.
You just kind of got in it. What was the kind of like biggest thing that you learned then, being kind of thrown into something where you hadn't done it before, but you had to just find a way to make it work?
Yeah. It was just really like full immersion until I got the self-confidence that I not only knew the regulations, but knew what I was doing in my job. And I just studied all the time. And I distinctly remember this moment 3 months in where a switch flipped. And because I've been reading and reading and reading the regulations, and at first it's like, what does that even mean? And then all of a sudden I was doing an audit and I saw a piece of objective evidence that didn't line up with what I expected from the regulation. And I just had this aha moment. Oh, this is an example of what that means. And so from auditing, it just, the whole world opened up to me from there, mentally. But it took a while. I remember I got sent to do a audit for a facility in Puerto Rico. And I literally brought like 10 pounds worth of books and interpretations with me so that I could reference things at night and cite them in my audit report. And it was silly at first.
And like, I know a lot of people that kind of started off as an auditor and then kind of went, you know, different ways into, you know, regulatory or quality, but it's that, it seems, you know, for a lot of people that is like a really solid foundation. What benefits has being an auditor had on your career and the way that you interact as a regulatory and quality professional today?
Well, auditors really have to know the full life cycle from regulatory and quality to do a proper audit and trace and do a true systems audit and trace something back from a post-market surveillance activity side or a manufacturing issue side, and then trace that issue maybe all the way back into the design, the risk management, change control. So a good auditor really is going to have that picture that's going to encompass both sides of regulatory and quality, which is why it's such a natural transition, I think, for good, strong auditors into other aspects of the career.
So you started off in this role kind of in Baxter. You applied for a role in a lab, they called you back, were like, hey, we think you'd be a great auditor, here you go, sink or swim. What happened then?
So I served in that position for several years, and I ended up having to make a change and move out to Tucson. So I had to, like, again, try to regroup on who is there to work for. You know, I'm kind of in this smallish town, not a whole lot of industry that fits my niche. And I happened to find a mid-sized respiratory anesthesia therapy company out here that will remain nameless for reasons you'll understand in a minute. But I was less than 30 at the time. And 4 months after I got there, I got a promotion, and I use the term loosely because to the regulatory affairs manager. And I was young and eager and like, yeah, I want it. Like, I'm excited. I can do it. I can take on anything type of attitude. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we have a 6-year-old warning letter and import alert in one facility in Mexico. We have 11 483s in this facility, and we have a full ISO recertification audit in 4 months. And in that full recertification audit, I found out that the company had no technical files. They thought that 510Ks were the technical files, and they brought out 510Ks from the 80s and 90s to show the auditors. And I'm just like, what is going on? So in the period of 1.5 to 2 years, I remediated the 6-year-old warning letter and import alert with the FDA. I remediated the 483s, and I had to put together an entire program to do 10 technical files across 3,000 product codes in 10 months to be able to keep the CE marking certificate. So it was, to this date, still one of the most stressful times of my life. But similar to the Baxter job, I would have had to have 3 or 4 separate careers to have all of that experience crammed into one place. So naturally I had to leave there because my hair was falling out.
I was going to say, you would have left with a lot more grey hairs than what you started with. But like, that just goes to show though, I think like being out of your comfort zone, obviously those are two examples of being significantly out of your comfort zone. But that's where you really get great experience.
Exactly. And if you're working in the startup world and they're on that novel cutting edge of technology, you're not going to find people that have done that thing from a regulatory perspective before, because it hasn't been done.
Yeah.
And so if you're not working with somebody that has for their entire career been outside of a comfortable space, you're going to be less successful in getting that product to market from a regulatory perspective.
Yeah. Because I think I was speaking to somebody the other day, because we've launched this mentoring program, and a lot of it is really focusing on kind of regulatory quality and clinical, but not the technical knowledge, everything else. Because in order to be successful, yes, you need to have expertise and you need to know stuff, but you need to be able to communicate, and
yes.
You need to have, there are other soft skills kind of that go alongside it. And I was speaking to somebody the other day, a senior VP, and I kind of said, what is the single most important kind of thing that you would look for in a potential hire? And it was the ability to problem solve, right? So the ability to kind of like know that if you have a problem, you can give that problem to someone, regulatory and quality, and they will find a solution. They will, using their expertise, they will find a way to make it work, rather than only be the one that's kind of like, hey, I've got so many problems, and I don't know, it's not my problem, it's your problem. And I think that that's critical. I see that a lot through all the hiring, and I don't know if you've had similar experiences.
Yeah. They have to be able to make a plan and give you options. And options could be, you can do A, you can do B, or C, you can do nothing. But if you do nothing, here are your consequences. And a lot of regulatory people have personalities where they get really rigid, and really take a firm stance, rather than seeing, where are my degrees of freedom? And so that, where do I have freedom to operate? And coaching, you're really also have to be a coach to people who are maybe in the manufacturing environment or on the sales side, and kind of bring everybody along with you to find a workable solution for the whole organization. And me personally, when I'm hiring junior type people, I look for just the willingness to learn and the willingness to take feedback. And this is going to sound crazy, but that company that I told you about that had all the horrific regulatory history that I remediated, they had no staff, really no significant quality regulatory staff when they hired me. They were all, kind of inspector floor level. They gave me really no budget to hire anybody proper. And the last place I had worked in town, there was a forklift driver who did warehouse paperwork, and her warehouse paperwork, because I was helping in purchasing, it was just always on the spot. It was timely, it was accurate. I could always reconcile her records to what was in the purchasing system. And I hired her as the complaint coordinator. And she was so meticulous in her attention to detail, in her willingness to learn, that given the resources I had, I was able to bring her up to a functional member of the team.
I think some of the most successful people I know that are today working in regulatory and quality didn't start in regulatory and quality. They came from somewhere else. They came from a different, what we call in recruitment, verticals, right? So a different functional area, or even a different industry. But because regulatory and quality, I mean, I've been recruiting it for, it's coming up to kind of 9 years, right? But when I started, the type of people that I would hire, their backgrounds would always be that they never started in regulatory and quality. You would come from somewhere, because over the last 10 years, I can speak from my experience, I've seen the profession really start to mature. And now it's, there's master's degrees you could do, and you can, that can be your first role when you come out, but it didn't used to be like that. And I think that, having this different perspective can be really, really valuable. So, okay. So so you had these two experiences. So at which point did you decide to say, hey, I'm just going to do it by myself? I'm starting a company.
Yeah, so I kind of make a joke that I come from a long line of unemployable people, which that I am at least a third generation entrepreneur.
Okay.
So it was in my blood all along, but it was just the way regulatory and quality people get treated in industry and the names that we get called. I've been called the business prevention expert. I've been called the stopper, the blocker, the police. And there was just this moment where I knew what I was preparing the company for was to set them up to be the strongest person and a leader in the industry.
Yeah.
And there was no value, like when you're in a medical space, regulatory is a building block on your business strategy. It's not a necessary evil. And if you treat it as a necessary evil, you're going to be limited in the spaces you can grow into. And so I just had this moment where I was like, I want to do this for people who value it. And in consulting, if somebody doesn't value your service, there's no, okay, thank you very much. My check's in the mail, right? See you next year when that didn't work out for you. And you can kind of move on to the next client that really values your advice and opinion as part of their business planning. And so now I would say 90% of my clients, I'm a collaborator for. We don't just have a deliverable and move on. I am almost like a outsourced member of their regulatory and quality team and their business strategy.
Yeah, I think it's so important. That is one of the great things of kind of having your own thing, that you set the rules in terms of like who you do and don't work with. And I think it's exactly the same with when I started kind of my company as well, right? And you kind of you can also say no to stuff, whereas when you're working in a company, it's very difficult. And when there is a company where they don't value your function, you're always firefighting against that. And I speak to people honestly every single day that their reasons for leaving companies is due to not feeling valued by upper management, or being asked to do stuff that they don't morally agree with, or just simply that like they're up against a brick wall, and every time they ask for something, it's met with so much negativity that they feel that they just can't push things forwards. And so setting up your own thing is definitely a good route. And I've seen in the last year loads of people jumping ship, especially because of MDR. The market, well, until COVID, the market was pretty good to say, hey, I'm just going to become a freelancer, choose the projects I work on, have a better work-life balance, get paid a bit more money on an hourly rate than what I would on a salary, but be prepared to take some risk. But I know as well that having a company and working for a company are two totally different things. What for you have been kind of like some of the biggest learnings?
Oh boy. It was, I guess, just the ability to keep pace as my business grew, and to make sure I was building the infrastructure to support that growth. And I remember watching my dad's business and the timing that he did things or didn't do things, or the stuff that he was trying to do it on his own. And I was always making these mental notes of I wouldn't do it that way. And all these judgy things that you do as an ignorant young adult to your parents. And now I'm like as it got time to get a bookkeeper, and I felt myself being hesitant to invest, because that comes off of my top line revenue. Now I just hired my first employee, all these things that I've been so cautious to add to the business, but it needed it. And then having to call my dad and tell him, hey, I just did these things. He's like, gosh, I was wondering when you were going to get to that. I don't know how you managed this long without it, but good for you,
Yeah.
Yeah, so just having to look back on those lessons I thought I learned and relearn them, and then get the commentary from my dad in retrospect. It's been quite entertaining.
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely an experience, and you go into it kind of, you know, expecting one thing, and it never kind of plays out exactly as you plan. But that's also the beauty of it, right?
Right.
What was your expectation when you were kind of like, okay, I'm going to start my own company, and then how did that compare to actually the reality of it?
Woo, that was like, it was when I was making my transition out of the crazy place.
Mhm.
And I had been working just out of sheer desperation to do something productive and that other people valued, and just challenge myself in a way that wasn't in this adversarial environment. I had been using my lunch breaks, my nights, my weekends, my vacation time to build my business on the side. And when I pulled the plug on my real job, that was at the time paying the bills, I had just enough clients to be at the poverty line for the United States. I was getting a divorce and I bought a house on my own. And it's just like, who does all that at one time? You know?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was like there was no choice. There was no choice. I had to be successful because I pulled the plug on my entire life, you know? And when I was walking out of the building on my last day, my third client called. And then the rest was history.
I think it's crazy as well to hear, like, literally that you did the three biggest decisions, or kind of like you had the three kind of like most impactful things that can happen to a person all happening to you at the same time, and yet you just had to kind of like push through and find a way to make it work. It comes back to what we were saying,
right back to the comfort zone conversation, right?
Yeah, that's what I just said. It comes back to the comfort zone and finding solutions and just finding ways to make it work. So what advice would you have for anybody who's listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm starting my own business? Like, what would be your top pieces of advice for them?
Word of mouth is not enough.
Yeah.
If you need to pay bills, word of mouth is not enough. And that's fine, because sales, marketing, business infrastructure, those things are hard, and those are outside a lot of people's skill sets who do regulatory and quality. And a lot of my best subcontractors, they just aren't interested in doing those activities. And they're like, Michelle, we're perfectly happy for you to just for you to feed us, because they don't realize. And then I have others that just don't realize how many, literally tens of thousands of dollars I'm investing in overhead, like marketing, conferences, lawyers to review contracts, bookkeeping. As my business grows, bookkeeping expenses grow. You can't, taxes, like all of these things are commitments to having a consistent business. And so just make sure that if you do it, that your lifestyle can support a natural word of mouth ebb and flow in terms of cash flow and infrastructure.
Yeah, it's really important. And I would say that, you know, the people that jump out of permanent positions to do their own thing, and then kind of come back to say, actually, I'm looking for a perm role. The reason why a lot of the time it doesn't work out is because of the fact that when you are contracting or freelancing, or when you have your own thing, you have to keep two plates spinning at the same time. And one plate is business development, and whatever you call that, sales, marketing, like basically bringing in a pipeline of potential business that, you know, most of it probably won't convert. So you need to have enough of it going on that you have, you know, the conversions coming through of other work that's going to be your next project and your next project. And then the other thing is like delivering against what you already have, right? And a lot of people kind of think, okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to have loads of people come to me because I'm going to say, hey, I'm freelancing, and everything's going to be inbound. And it's really difficult to get that inbound business. And actually, to be successful as a freelancer or to have your own business, so much of it is that kind of sales and marketing piece. How important has, for you, I'd be interested to know, because I know you're very active on LinkedIn, how important has brand been for you to actually generate business?
Oh, incredibly. And I think one of the biggest things about marketing is to be consistent, and to be consistent in your brand and in your messaging. So I say people don't wake up needing to do a 510K today. So they have to have known that Michelle is out there. They have to already know who Michelle is. Everybody that calls me, 95% of the time, they don't ask me questions about my qualifications or my business or tell me. They know. They know. I've been out there. You see my face, you hear my voice, you know who I am, what I'm about before you ever call me. And I have trained all my contractors that what my brand looks like, who I am, and that they have to be my voice too. So you have to be consistent throughout, not just your marketing materials, but the consistency of your customer service and your deliverables. It all has to meet that outward face of your business.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes difficult when you scale, right? Because when you're small and it's you and there's a couple of you, it's really easy to control that message. But as you grow, trying to make sure that everybody's living and breathing that same message and that same brand is critical for consistency and to keep that pipeline of projects and stuff coming. It's really I'm super excited just speaking to you. What other piece of advice would you give? So one is obviously word of mouth isn't enough. What piece of advice could you give for someone who maybe is kind of starting up already and to take action? What could they do?
Well, it's back to where we started, where you mentioned the personality. It's like, be very self-aware of where are those soft skills that you need to round out to get good at that other plate that you've never managed spinning before. Where is it that you need to get good? And who's your demographic? Are you going to be working for the big companies? Because it's very hard to get in and get that business, but you're going to be a worker bee there. Or are you going to be work in the startup companies that need really strategic help and a partner? Well, those personalities of the people that it takes to do these kind of venture companies and technologies, that is a crazy set of personalities, skill sets, eccentricities. And so if you think that you're just going to show up with a client and not need to manage all of those dynamics, your business is going to be limitedly successful. And then also, if you know you're already one of those people that's kind of the stick in the mud type regulatory and quality person, your clients need to enjoy working with you. So you need to make sure that you're personable, and to your comment also about know how to problem solve, know how to give the client solutions. So I think the other one would be just self-awareness and personality management.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And also kind of like continually working on yourself, right? Like one of the challenges or one of the difficulties I had at the beginning was, I don't know if you had this, but like I didn't report to anyone, right? So like you have to manage yourself as well. You have to manage yourself as well as the business and the team, because you are the only person that can hold you accountable. What are you doing to continually develop your areas of weakness?
Right.
Your little dog's in the background.
Yeah. That's one of the executive team right there.
What's his name?
That one's Morty, and he's a pug, and he's the chief fun officer. I can see my pool, and I can occasionally see him out there swimming around the pool, and I'm like, I want to be swimming in the pool, but my boss won't let me off. I remember when I started, it's like I had to try not to be my own worst boss, because I'm so self-critical especially when I'm pushing the boundaries of a comfort zone, just won't quit with the research and what I needed to be confident and like all of these things. And so to give my own self a break, you know, I distinctly remember teaching myself not to be a bad boss to my own self. Does that make sense?
100%. 100. How do you manage yourself?
Ooh, I still have. So at one of my last jobs, I had negotiated to have a corporate coach because they did the personality screening coming in the door. And the owner of the company got on the phone with me and was telling me some things about my personality that were unique to him. And he had profiled 53,000 people. Mm-hmm. And so I negotiated for a year's worth of training with him, which was just transformative to me. And I still talk to him on a regular basis. And then just managing my health, you know, just being very self-aware of that work-life balance, that I can make myself physically ill with some of my health conditions. And then building the infrastructure. As I've gotten busier and busier, is getting the bookkeeper, the assistant, I just hired the first employee, which I'm super excited about. I mean, that was such a huge commitment. It was so scary, you know?
Yeah.
Getting the resources I need for my own sanity so I can keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. It's critical. For what the best piece of advice I ever got, and I got it in like year 3. I wish, if anyone is thinking about starting a business, like, this is my advice: delegate and outsource. Literally write a list of all the activities that you do on a daily or weekly basis. Literally write them down, and then look at them and say, what do I need to do, me personally, and what can somebody else do? Like, what do I personally not have to do? And for me, that was transformative, because then I was like, I need a finance person, I need an admin person, and you just start to, and then all of a sudden you have breathing room.
Right.
And that was a complete game changer for me.
Yeah. And what I'm so excited about is my brain come July the 13th is going to, that's going to be my Independence Day, where my brain is going to be free to start opening up new avenues for the business, where, like, I know things are coming in the area of CBD regulations, of biologics regulations. There's a couple of other specific areas I know the business needs to grow into that I just haven't had the bandwidth to focus on. And I came up with this phrase 2 weeks ago: I can't be about what's now, I have to be about what's next. Mm-hmm. And so building that infrastructure that I need for me to be about what's next while somebody's is taking care of what's happening right now.
Yeah, it's critical. You have to be in the future. You have to be where, I don't know, where there's one similar as well about skating where the puck is going to go. Don't skate where the puck currently is. And yeah, that's key.
I remember one time when I was journaling, that's the rest of the executive team waking up from a nap. One time when I was journaling, I, like, all of a sudden said, what if I start solving this problem from a different perspective? And so I wrote a letter as my future self to my current self about, what did this look like on the backside? What did we do? How did we feel? Was it even a thing anymore?
And
so that's a fun trick.
And you said journaling.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Like, you know, in the morning or at night, where you kind of write down and keep a journal of either what happened or what you're feeling or something you're going through. And, you know, it's supposed to clear your head and help you solve the problem. Well, most people do it about whatever they're dealing with right now. And I'm like, well, I'm not solving it right now. And so I'm like, well, what did this look like on the backside? So I'm like, I wrote Dear Michelle, and I wrote some stuff, and then I signed it, your future self.
That's so interesting.
And, yeah, it was, and the problem totally looked different when I visualized it from being through it. In fact, it didn't even look like a problem.
Mm. How long have you been journaling for? So it's like writing the diary then, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that for?
Oh, 7 years.
What made you start?
I had a good friend that is about 10 years older than me, and so she's more mature in some of these self-management techniques.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one that got me into yoga and exploring some things to control my health and whatnot, and she did it regularly, and was just always surprised the stuff that came out, you know, the ideas and that kind of thing. So she got me into it. So it was one of my own mentors, I guess.
That's really interesting, because I think everybody has their different ways of releasing whatever energy, right? And I've never met anybody that actually does journaling, I have to say. So, but what would you say was the biggest impact of journaling for you?
It opened up headspace.
Okay.
And then other ideas would come out that weren't just about what I was writing about. Like, I can't tell you how many ideas for books have come up just from there being an idea that clicked. So yeah, and then perspective. And so I don't journal near as much now as I did when I was in industry and early in my business and early in my marriage, because I do it more when I'm frustrated and need to download and clear my head. I should really do it more even when things are good, because I'm super creative. So I should be doing it in good times too, to capture the positive creativity, not just the positive stuff that came out of the frustration.
Super interesting. What about work-life balance? That's one I always like to ask people, because people have such different perspectives on whether it's even a thing.
That has been really, really tough, because, you know, I watched my dad and my granddad in their own businesses, and that's just about all they did. And that's what I was taught, having, like, to them, self-employment meant struggle. It meant commitment, and it does mean commitment, but they meant this is all you do, and it just consumes you. And so I knew, again, back to look what I was learning from them, is that I didn't want my life to look like that. And because I told you that I had gotten a divorce and then I got remarried, I knew what I didn't want my new marriage to look like, because my ex-husband would work 17 hours a day with an hour and a half commute each way. And so I knew what I did not want my life to look like, but then I would beat myself up if I quit working at 5:30 when my new husband got home. And so that was such a struggle for me, is to create a work-life balance that kept not only me healthy, but my family healthy. But also then I created judgment for myself, because I've been taught my entire life, no, you work from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. And I dream about work. If things are really busy, I literally do work in my sleep. And yeah, so it's a struggle, but those wellness things are important.
Yeah, I think even because we're more connected, you know, and it's part of just having a global business, like your phone is never off, right? I mean, in a sense where, like, somebody's awake somewhere.
Exactly.
And so, like, it's not the same as what it used to be. But I mean, I know people that would, you know, literally just kind of like shut everything off 6 o'clock, don't look at their emails ever again until the morning, and properly disconnect. But equally, I know people that, like, will work on holiday, but go on holiday a hell of a lot more, because they kind of do a bit of both, and it's more of a flow. Right. But the most important is that you find what works for you.
Yeah. And so you have to redefine it as, maybe it's not that I just turn everything off at 6 or whatever, but it's what if your work and life ebb and flow together? And there's no hard line, because a hard line is a job. That's something you have to, and if you own your own business, it's something that you should enjoy. It doesn't mean that you can't ever turn it off and unplug, but let's redefine what it looks like. Let's throw all the concepts of what a job is out the window. And an example of that is, we used to love to travel a lot, and we love beaches and scuba diving. And I was sitting on the beach in Mexico, and a client of mine was having a recall situation, and they were panicking, and they really needed to talk to me. And so the Wi-Fi reached to the beach. I had my laptop. I was sitting in my bathing suit. I had my toes in the sand. My laptop was up. I was on the phone, and there was a nice lady bringing me a cocktail. And I'm like, I am invoicing right now. I am literally, somebody is paying me to sit here and manage their crisis. I did something right. You know, I'm not working on vacation. I'm being paid. I'm paid to go on vacation. It still works. So it's just, so then I said, well, how many beaches can I work on and send invoices? And sometimes, even if I'm trying not to work because I do need to unplug, I'll do something just so I can say, wow, this is a life goal, you know?
Yeah. And then your holiday's paid for, right? Those margaritas are paid for. But I think I had a similar experience actually, where I was on holiday in Greece, and I did like on my own holiday to disconnect type thing, and I had an offer come through for a candidate that, you know, was in process, and it came through earlier than expected. And I remember being on this remote beach, right? There was literally nobody on this beach, because it was like this little cove that I found. And I was just like walking up and down this beach, like on the phone to this candidate, offering them, you know, like their next career step and this, like, you know, salary increase that they were looking for. And that was a moment where I was like, I have my own business, and like I'm able to do that. And that is one of the great moments. But equally, let's not paint the picture too glossy. You know, there are challenges. So what would you say kind of was the biggest challenge for you when you started your business?
Well, I'm kind of going through it right now. Okay. With the pandemic. So I never stop right now. Even when I don't do anything over an entire weekend, it takes that long. My left eye twitches almost all the time right now. I get 30, 40 emails an hour. I took one day off and I got 200 emails and 7 hours worth of meetings on my calendar the next day. And I'm just like, my stress level is beyond high. My business is trying to scale fast enough to keep it up. Everybody's in a panic because probably 50% of what I'm doing right now is related to COVID. And because everybody's at home, they send you an email, then they text you, then they call you, then they don't mind texting you at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning. And you're just like, oh, not that I was asleep anyways, but you know, there's no space right now to breathe. So
it's just, on the other hand, it's good to be busy.
Yeah, it's a true blessing. And everybody wants to talk to me, you know? And so just kind of getting people comfortable to transition into, okay, you're in good hands, no matter whose hands you're in on my team.
Yeah. So if someone's contemplating, if they're working in a company right now, because you've lived on both sides now, right? So you know what it is. So if somebody's working in a company right now and thinking about, should I go independent? Like, you know, should I leave and take the jump and take the risk? What would your advice be to them?
Find people to work with initially that have firms like me. Not necessarily some of the staffing firms, because you probably won't enjoy that work. That's almost like a worker bee. But true consulting firms And then start getting used to the lifestyle. Does that really work for you? You know, then that way you at least have some consistency and incoming work while you take that time to build your own business. You can get your own work-life balance situation worked out, and just give yourself time to acclimate in a way where it's maybe less pressure than going out and truly starting your own word of mouth business initially.
What about the people that are kind of like trying to decide whether they should stay in a permanent role and work for a company or set up their own thing?
If you haven't already had a personality profile, get one.
We do them actually.
Yeah. And then
come to Elemed. We do them.
And see if the profile indicates that is something that is natural to your personality, or if not, what do you have to do to prepare your personality for it?
Yeah.
My personality type says that if I was going to be successful in industry, my leader was going to have to be very sensitive and create what the profiler called intrapreneurship for me. To give me this sense of ownership for my department or growing a certain area of the business.
I think that's so important actually, that, you know, really understanding who you are as a person and then play to your strengths, because it's not for everyone. But, you know, and some people will be super successful like yourself because actually you've found yourself in a role that allows you to play to all your strengths. And that's really kind of, you know, where you want to be. Okay, question. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Maybe just all knowing, so that I don't have to read all the thousands and thousands and thousands pages of regulation. That would help with my work-life balance. And what was the European Commission thinking when they wrote MDR? It makes no sense. Like, if you know, you could riddle out all those things behind the scenes. Oh boy, I could have my own private island.
Give Richard Branson a run for his money. Okay, so let's talk for a moment on kind of like influential people in your career, because I always think that like everybody is a product of someone, right? Like there's people that influence you very early on, and that's how you turn out how you are. They influence you positively or negatively, but that is really critical to helping you figure out who you are and then really growing into the role that you're in. So for you personally, who has been your inspiration?
Well, my dad, in a lot of ways, you know, just kind of always seeing that was out there for me. It was always an option for me. And now to see how much my business has grown, and he's so proud, and he's moved out. Like early on, he was like trying to tell me what to do and all this stuff. And he's kind of just moved out of that role because he's like, wow, he's like, I just can't even believe what's happening in your business right now. You're just doing so great. I don't have anything to say. And to have, you know, your dad like a fan is just so cool. And then, you know, my husband now also just really opened me up to set me free to move further into my personality, to say, no, you're not aggressive. You're a boss. You're a leader. You're not, you know, because especially being from the South and a woman and strong, I have been stereotyped most of my career. And for him to like remove and help me challenge all of those barriers and stereotypes. And he's just my biggest fan. He calls himself my handler. When he travels with me, he carries my bags and makes sure I have food and a drink and, you know, all the stuff. And it's like, and he's a huge leader in a very large pharmaceutical company. So it's not like he's just my sidekick. So to have these two people who are so influential in a woman's life to be your biggest fans and not put you in boxes and like really say, go do you. We're right here. We got you. It's very empowering. So just make sure your infrastructure in your life is also set up there to be your fans and your empowerers.
That's true. That's 100% true, because it all starts at home, right? And having kind of that support network is critical. Because it is.
Why would you want a work-life balance if your life was awful at home?
That's true.
You know?
All right, so what's next then for you? So obviously you've hired someone, you're growing, world's domination, it sounds like, but seriously, what's next? What's on the cards?
Oh, in the short term, I'm going to set up a auditor training program.
Okay.
Because NDR, you know, me and my most senior consultants have been challenged on our competency to know how to audit, because we didn't have a 20-question quiz that we took on ISO 1345 2016. So that made me mad. So now I'm going to make a whole business model off of it. And then just I'm going to start experimenting in what's that next space. What all does that look like? Is it regulatory? Is it quality? Do I set a team up that manages lean as it is while I go do something else? I mean, I already told you the pug swims. I mean, imagine the Instagram followers I could get. You know, that's where the real money, he could have a little swimming truck merchandise and all kinds of stuff. I mean, who knows? Write a book. I've got about a dozen books that came out of all this birthing of the business that I could write that would really contribute to society as a whole, especially to people who are wanting to start their own business. So,
well, it's really, I'm so excited for you. It's been inspirational talking to you and learning your story, because like I say, you're always in my feed. So I see you everywhere, but I didn't know your story, and it's been fascinating to learn about it, and the fact that you do journaling and all this cool stuff. No, like I really wish you all the best. I have one last question, which is the one that I ask everybody right at the end, which is the big picture question. So what is the legacy that you want to leave on the world?
It's people. It's people. It's patients that are healthier than they would have been without the devices I helped bring to market. It's the entrepreneur customers that I helped make successful and make their own legacies on the world. And then it's the subcontractors and now employees that I've set free to pursue their version of work-life balance and what they wanted out of life. And so it's that whole spectrum of people, from the patient to the people working under me. And for me, it's never been about the money. It's been about the legacy.
And that's a very big purpose to have, right? Like, it's been really interesting speaking with you, Michelle. I wish you all the best. We're out of time, but
hey, I should interview you one time.
I would love for you to interview me.
Let's put that on the books, because I think you're lovely.
Let's do it. Okay, so listen, for everybody who's listening, thank you so much, and give this one a thumbs up, a like, connect with Michelle on LinkedIn, send her an email. I'm sure she would be happy to collaborate with you. Find out about her auditor training. She's got loads of stuff, and if you're interested in the personality profiling, come to Elemed, because we can help you there. Stay safe, everyone, and take care.